Welcome back to my YouTube channel. I got bangs, it's a new year, we're in a new spot, everything's changing. But I am super excited about everything that 2019 has in store for us, except for maybe that recession everyone is talking about. Is that coming? Is the world going to end? If you have existing real estate goals, should you hold off or act now? If you've asked yourself any of these questions, then you're in luck, because that's what we're talking about today. What to expect in the housing market in 2019. First things first, if you're new around here, my name is Ryann Carroll with Portland Diggs Real Estate here in Portland, Oregon, and I greatly appreciate you stopping by. Remembering to like this video, and of course subscribe, as I am regularly putting out videos. True, maybe many people come for the bloopers, but I like to think that often these folks end up sticking around for the real estate tips and tricks. Per usual, comment below if you have any questions, real estate or otherwise, to say hello or just connect. It's one of my favorite things about this little community. And as always, my contact information can be found in the description box below. Use it, save it, send it to your friends and family with real estate needs. Whatever you want, it's there for you. 2019, it is here, and there have been lots and lots of whispers about it. Let's address those. First and foremost, that big ol' elephant in the room. As we've been seeing more price adjustments, increased inventory paired with layoffs in the mortgage industry, business tax cuts, decreased incentives for buyers, and growing interest rates, doesn't this mean that we are coming to another recession? Now first, I'll ask you to pump the brakes for me for one quick second, because we all need to remember that obviously when any change occurs, whether it's positive or negative, this creates doubt in people's minds. Doubt breeds fear, and fear causes folks to freeze, and the media loves capitalizing on all of that. But that's why we're here today, and why I hope people continue to seek updated data, because it certainly is not all storm clouds, fire and brimstone. But to appropriately discuss the future, I think we first need to revisit what happened in 2018 and where we sit today. So a couple major things happened in 2018 worth mentioning. The first being Trump's Tax Cuts and Jobs Act of 2017, which was effective in 2018 and super boosted the economy by massively increasing tax cuts for businesses. This caused much higher business spending and investments. Gross domestic product, commonly known as GDP, is essentially the measurement of an economy in a specific area over a given amount of time. Apologies to define that if you're already familiar, but I figured for the folks out there that might not be, we'd go into it. What we've been seeing for an average GDP growth in the United States was around 2.2%, but we saw huge GDP growth right away in 2018 based on the big increase in benefits that businesses were experiencing, with numbers like 3.5% in the second quarter and 4.2% growth in the third. However, when taxes are cut, that's generally a give-take scenario, and something has to be made up somewhere. And a big piece of what changed was the doubling of the standard deduction, which in turn did hurt real estate incentives for residential buyers. So tax benefits and purchasing power were ultimately watered down, and people who were not overly interested in buying houses were even less so incentivized. Now, the real estate market is not an instantly reactive market, and we did see a ton of buying continuing to happen despite these changes in the early part of 2018, mostly due to the fact that the buyers that were already planning on buying eventually did so. However, in the latter part of 2018, this is where we started to see the market adjust as a lagged reaction to the decrease in incentives and the increase in mortgage rates. That said, if you tuned in to my earlier video where we discussed months of inventory, you will recall likely that in the fall we hit the highest inventory in years here in Portland, but that number was still in the low threes. And if you also recall, an even market equates to 6 months of inventory. All the same, it certainly reflects some of the national market adjustments we've just talked about. But what I'm trying to get at here is that the market adjustment is what we've actually all been waiting and hoping for. Today, we remain comfortably in the threes here in Portland as far as MOI, making us still in a healthy seller's market. And let me say again another way, being in an even market is not at all a bad thing, and honestly what the industry has been hoping for. However, we would also have to nearly double our current inventory just in order to reach that fully even market. So inventory increases does not mean that the world is going to implode in on itself, and is actually quite a positive change. Now, I did mention layoffs. What about those? Where those are stemming from is not a highly likely market crash or housing crisis, but rather the continued increase in mortgage rates. We did see rates also steadily go up in 2018, and it is anticipated that we may see another bump up or two based on the fact that we expect the economy to actually continue to improve in 2019. So for folks sitting on the sidelines, waiting with frothing mouths to snatch up that cheap inventory when the recession hits, they might find themselves pretty sorry to have missed out on lower rates and within a market that continued to appreciate rather than that appreciating market that they had anticipated. Now, I say all of this not only as someone whose job it is to know the market, but all I've said so far and all I will say has been largely supported by the economic data out there. But as a quick disclaimer, I'm not an economist. I am no financial guru. I am simply an advocate for my clients, and therefore I am constantly seeking and absorbing as much of this research as I can. But let's define something really quick. While I don't like the word recession, and I do my best to avoid the word entirely, I almost didn't use it at all in this video, that has to do with the general misunderstanding of what the word actually means. And I think you are owed the true definition. So recession is defined as economic slowdown that occurs for 2 straight quarters. Say that one more time. An economic slowdown that occurs for 2 straight quarters. It isn't defined as a market crash, a housing disaster, or even necessarily housing depreciation. In fact, of the last 6 recessions, 4 of the 6 cases, appreciation in the housing market actually continued. It just slowed down. One resulted in very little to no depreciation, and then there was 2008, which certainly and unfortunately we all remember all too well. So given all of that, why does it feel like we continue to read and hear that a serious recession is definitely coming? That's most likely because yes, an economic slowdown is coming, but it is also needed. The rate at which prices were increasing was and is not sustainable, but to balance this out does not mean that we need to be suddenly jerked in reverse. Rather, what we will see is an economic slowdown where appreciation decreases, but not to the point of depreciation. So in other words, housing prices may not be increasing at the rate that they have been, but they will most likely continue to increase, only at a lower level of appreciation. Latest numbers are suggesting increases of around 2% rather than the 4 to 5% that we've been previously seeing nationally. In fact, the Federal Reserve also aligns with this idea that we will likely decline in the pace of our economic acceleration and agrees that we will most likely not see a full market crash.
Do you see why economic slowdown is a better term and why the media may have jumped on the easy fear-inducing term of recession given the situation that we were in 2008 and the freshness that is in our minds? Clickbait is alive and well, guys.
Okay, we get it. It's coming. We get why, we understand that it won't be that bad, but when exactly is this economic slowdown coming? In early 2018, top economists and market experts were surveyed by the Wall Street Journal and Pulsenomics, asking just that question. At the time, the responses primarily pointed to 2020, but since then, experts have been agreeing that even that may need to be pushed back a little, say 2021, 2022. In fact, 100 of the leading housing economists and market analysis professionals were recently asked to provide their projections for housing prices in the coming year, and only 4% projected that we may depreciate slightly, 2% anticipated that we will break even, and the massive majority, 94%, actually think that housing will continue to appreciate. Okay. Well, what about 2008? Aren't we seeing some of the same warning signs today that a bubble might be coming? Well, to talk about that appropriately, we need to talk about what those signs actually are. So in the years prior to 2008, a ton of people were taking a lot of money cash out refinances. And today, because as interest rates are going up, we are seeing a bit more of that happening. However, and it's a strong however, 2005, 2006, 2007 combined, people in the states pulled out $824 billion worth of equity out of their homes, leaving little to no equity at all. They were taking out every last penny from their homes so that they could buy a few more, which left, again, little to no equity in any of them. And with the sheer number of folks that were doing this, along with the other pieces at play, we all know what happened. That bubble burst. Over the last 3 years, however, we've only taken out a total of $172 billion, which is less than a quarter of the earlier numbers. And today, in many, many cases, people are taking that out of their tappable equity only, meaning that they are taking that money out of the equity that they have that is over 20%. Today, people are taking out $10,000, $20,000 so that they can start a business or send their kids to college. But it is a wildly minimal comparison to 05, 06, 07, which led to the housing crisis in 2008. In fact, today, over 48% of the houses in the country have 50% or more equity in their homes. That's nuts, like in an awesome way, but it's nuts. And the money being taken out in these smaller increments will actually help as new businesses are started and that money is put back into the economy. We've also seen a massive increase in tappable equity of 21%. That paired with the fact that we've only taken out a quarter of what we had previously, these signs actually reflect a healthy economy and certainly don't suggest another bubble and burst. In conclusion, are there signs of a recession or economic slowdown? You're catching on. Coming in the next couple of years? Most likely, yes. A housing crisis? No. And certainly not in 2019. So this is why it's still a great time to buy before mortgage rates continue to increase, and why selling now is also a great idea, as any educated buyer or buyer represented by a strong agent will be motivated to purchase in order to lock in those low rates now. And sellers, the most important thing for you is to make sure that you price your house correctly. So again, connect to an agent who knows your market and how it is being affected by this change in climate. This expert should be able to help you get a really solid number when taking your listing to market without the wide range that comes with home estimators like Zillow, while also taking into account future market projections. Not convinced? Still want to prep for doomsday? That's totally okay. While the data simply doesn't support an all-out crash, if you're a strongly risk-averse person, here are my recommendations for you. Pay off any variable debt, stay away from negative cash flow, and sure, get yourself prepared for the market to fall. But I do think that even in a worst case scenario, you should feel free to buy a deal if it comes along and you happen to have some cash on hand and you wouldn't be overextending yourself to do so. That way, you're a bit protected even in the event that the market does crash, and if it does, post-purchase, hold on to that asset, ride it out, and do not sell at the bottom. Also, if all the top economists, real estate folks, and I are all wrong, that'd be a pretty epic I told you so. Not a bad silver lining. Well, I know this was a long one today with a lot of different data points, but I appreciate you sticking around. And as a last plea to all of you out there, please remember to check your sources. Read more than the headlines and understand that the market and the predictions around it do adjust, as we've seen very recently. So always work closely with your real estate professional to get the latest information globally, domestically, and most importantly, locally. I'm Ryann Carroll with Portland Diggs Real Estate. You are awesome. I loved talking with you today, and until next time, dig where you live. Guys, I got too hot, too hot. Is the world going in? So hot. It's fantastic. That heater blasting. Heights. Big city. I do try and